Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome into the Gramlich and McLean podcast, presented by Ingles, the official supermarket of the Gramlich and McLean podcast. And we're back with our summer series as it continues. We're going to go summer series through July, and then August, y'all, completely college football focused as we get you ready for the season. We can't wait for that. Mac, it's the week of July 4th. July 4th is tomorrow. My birthday, we're
more importantly,
yeah,
your
obviously,
birthday.
Obviously, we're recording this a little early. But my birthday, if you're listening right now, was yesterday. So if you didn't wish me happy birthday, what are you doing? You missed it. So I'm still accepting any sort of calls and texts. But yeah, it's the most important thing. And Mac, I turned 30. So
woo! Big 30.
You might not hear from me for a little bit as I'm in mourning.
Well, it just might take you a while. Everything kind of slows down.
Yeah. And I don't know how to use technology anymore,
That's
basically
why we're doing this Zoom.
How is 30? Like I'm a little worried.
It's rough, KG. Your knees already hurt probably.
Oh, they're shot.
Your knees start hurting a little worse. Your back. You start picking up Jacob and you're just like, wow, is this 300 pounds or is this a little?
He basically is.
It's unbelievable. But no, I'm excited. 4th of July. You guys, tomorrow we're celebrating hopefully some safe fireworks, and of course you got to go hit up our friends at Ingles and get everything you need to grill out, cook out. What's y'all's plans, KG? Are you going anywhere? You going to the park? You seeing some fireworks? I know that baby, it changes things, right?
We're doing it though. We're going to the coast with some friends, the South Carolina coast, and we're splitting up meals. So we're going to be doing burgers one of the nights. So we're going to get all of the stuff we need, all of our burger stuff. That was my phone. Sorry. From Ingles, and we'll get those ready. And then of course, going to make a salad to go with it. Mac, I'm a salad fiend. So Nick will handle the grill. I'll make the salad. So we'll get all that with Ingles, and maybe some of their 4th of July red, white, and blue themed pastries and desserts, perhaps a cookie cake. I'm just going to throw that out there. Yeah.
Oh, killer. I can't wait. We are going down to Charleston. I can't wait. Super excited. Be on the water and get that baby girl. Listen to this. We have this swing that goes on the boat. I can't wait.
What?
It's going to be awesome. You'll get pictures. You'll get content. Don't worry.
Of course. I live for the Amelia content. I have told Nick, because we're talking with our other friends whose babies are a little older, about they're going to be swimming. And I said, Jacob's not going near the pool. Sorry. No. He's not. He's too little. I'm going to dress him in really cute swim outfits, but I want him nowhere near the water.
Right. Just in a towel over to the side. Maybe you can see the pool in the background a little bit.
For the photos, yeah.
That's it. Anyway, I can't wait. It's super fun. It's going to be a great weekend, great week celebrating our great country here. But it's going to be a great podcast episode because my friend Davenport is on. She's with us. I've known her for a couple of years, but we never have met in person, never worked together. And finally, this XFL season, we got that opportunity. She's an absolute rock star, just absolutely busts it. She's hustling. You're going to hear all about that and kind of how she got to where she is in this crazy sports world.
She is a hustler. I did the ESPN Plus radio grind for 3 years. It is such a grind, and she is still doing it. She works for 104.5 The Zone, Nashville's premier sports radio station, just signed a long-term extension. So big congrats to Dawn on that. Before moving to Nashville, Dawn worked at ABC Wilmington and then also in Richmond. She talks about that and just the journey, man. Her journey has been crazy to get to where she is.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm not going to hold it against her. She is an Auburn Tiger, 3-year letter winner there playing volleyball. Go freaking Tigers. Auburn is like Clemson without a lake. It's not as cool. I should have brought that up. I didn't talk trash to her. I just kind of was being respectful. And now I'm kind of being a joker doing it while she's not here. But anyway, let's get to it. Here's a quick message from our friends over at Ingles.
It's time to discover the convenience and time savings of contact-free pickup with Ingles Curbside. Just visit shop.ingles-markets.com or download the app. And your Ingles personal shopper gets to work with specialized training on how to select the freshest items for a pre-scheduled pickup. They'll even text you with updates. You pull up to a designated space and your personal shopper delivers your items right to your vehicle. Fresh, fast, and affordable. It's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
I just wanted to open up with sports and why that's so important to you. When did you kind of know you wanted to be in sports media? And it sounds like that was a defining time, a defining moment right there.
Oh yeah, I went through. I think my dad tracked it like 8 different majors in college. Until I ended up in this one. So as far as sports goes, have always been a huge sports fan. I have a younger brother. He's 2 years younger than me. Who big basketball guy. My dad graduated from Duke, which means
there we go.
We grew up going to Duke basketball games,
Come on.
following them around tournament wise. Our family vacations back in the day were, going to spring training, baseball spring training. That's what we did as like family vacation growing up. So I've been around it my whole life. My mom's probably the biggest sports fan of everybody. Now she's a Georgia Bulldog, so we'll
let it slide.
We'll forgive her for that. But yeah, so she could probably name every single batting average for an Atlanta Brave player for the last 25 years. I mean, she's diehard. So growing up, it was always sports. And I knew I wanted to play a sport in college. Hence volleyball at Auburn. So I ended up walking on my freshman year and just loved it and fell in love with that place. Went through at least probably 7 or 8 different majors. I thought I wanted to be a vet for a little bit. And then I did my nice job shadow at the veterinarian office. And I was like, nope. That's I don't think this is for me. As a matter of fact, they gave me a little puppy that didn't know how to use a leash yet. So they're like, oh, here, go work with him for a little bit before our surgery, and I was like, I don't have the patience for this at all. Then I thought I wanted to be a doctor for a while. I worked in the emergency room in Opelika, Alabama overnight for a little bit. No. I was like, I can't do it. Can't do it. Moving on. Next major. Had organic chemistry and was like, drop ad.
Too hard.
I'm out. Yep. So I went through all those, and I actually came into Auburn as a theater major, by the way. So I seriously hit everything. And then finally decided on mass communication. I did Eagle Eye TV there, fell in love with it. Loved the business of journalism and broadcast journalism and jumped into that. And then also thought, you know what, maybe I want to be a lawyer. So when I graduated, took the LSAT, got a decent score, got accepted into law school.
Wow.
And then was looking at kind of money and how to pay for it. I had a little bit of scholarship money left over from I did Miss North Carolina, the America system back in the day. So I had some scholarship money, but it was not near enough to help. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I don't want to have to work and go to law school and pay. So here we are. Now
you made it.
I made it.
That was a lot. That was a lot to unpack. I think I have to just follow up with this quickly. I'm sorry, KG. So we've got a Duke Blue Devil and a Georgia Bulldog, and that somehow makes War Eagle. How did that happen? How did that happen?
To my mom's demise. I mean, she was distraught because think about it. I was born in Texas, but grew up in Georgia. So all of my friends went to Georgia. Like that was where you go if I was in Peachtree City, Georgia, which is like 2.5 hours, from Athens. That she was like, oh, my kids are going to Georgia. No problem. No. So what it came down to for me was volleyball. Honestly, I had a best friend whose sister went to Auburn. We went to visit. I fell in love with Auburn, and I had a bunch of scholarship offers for smaller volleyball programs, and decided that I wanted to go to Auburn, but I would only go there if I had an opportunity to play volleyball. Wow. And sometimes you're in the right place at the right time and you get lucky. And I was at a club volleyball tournament, Junior Olympic back then. Like it's totally different world now, but and I got to meet the Auburn coach. He watched a couple of our games and I got to walk on at Auburn. So that's how I ended up there. It worked out that way. I always tell my mom, I'm like, hey, I would have gone to your alma mater. They just didn't want me,
Yes, there you go.
Exactly.
So here's the worst part. My brother followed me to Auburn.
Oh,
so
no.
Both of us are Auburn Tigers, and poor mom never got her Georgia Bulldog.
Oh man. Well, maybe your daughter,
Yikes.
maybe she'll end up a Georgia Bulldog. I don't know if you'll like that though,
Well,
but it
the
would be
hell
full
she
circle.
will.
It would be full circle there.
Yeah. Oh no. Auburn Tiger.
That's
There we
right.
go.
I love that. Well, Don, we have a lot in common. So my mom went to Duke, and
Okay.
so I grew up a Duke basketball fan as well.
Love it.
And my dad went to
Love
Oklahoma, so
Michigan
somehow Oklahoma and Duke person make a Clemson Tiger. I don't know how that happens either. And my dad also wanted me to go to law school until the very end. Basically, until I signed with ESPN, he finally stopped bugging me about it. So I
There you
understand.
go.
We have a lot in
I know,
common.
my dad was like, you don't want to work that hard. You're good. Like, go do what you're doing.
Yeah, and my brother's a lawyer, and no, it's not much fun. What we get to do is a lot of fun. So let's talk about kind of that process, Don. So we both know okay, I'm done playing. You spend so much time, you're 24/7, 365 focused on volleyball, football, basketball, whatever it is. And then you got to find something else to do with your life in many respects. So I know you said you worked at Auburn in Mass Common with kind of internships and that kind of thing, but you also told me before this that you worked in local news too. So how was your path to not only ESPN, but you do a big time radio show in Nashville as well. So tell us more about specifically the path to kind of the radio side.
A little bit of a crazy path, kind of like my decision on major, I guess. I like to try new things and dabble in things apparently, but right out of college, couldn't get a job like many of us. It's so hard to get a job in this industry. And so I bartended for a while until finally back then it was on VHS, took my resume tape on VHS and traveled to all of the small markets in the South and would just call news directors and be like, hey, I'm in your town. I'm actually at the front door. Can I give you my tape?
Wow.
And I ended up having my best friend worked in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is an amazing town on the beach, like beautiful. So I went to visit her, showed up at the door at all these, news stations, ended up, one of the news directors saw me and was like, it's not bad. It's okay. I'm like, hey, I'll take okay. So he offered me a news reporter job, not sports. And I said, well, I really want to do sports, but I'll take a news job just to get my foot in the door and try and work that way. So got that. They, Wilmington, North Carolina, they pay you in sunshine. So ramen noodles it was for food there, that's for sure. But the week before I was supposed to start, the news director calls me and he's like, my second sports person just quit. Do you want that? Weekend anchor? I'm like, absolutely. I'm in. I got lucky and got to start in sports in Wilmington, North Carolina, which you guys know get to cover a lot of ACC schools and NASCAR and all kinds of things. So spent 3 years there, 2.5 years there. Second job was Richmond, Virginia. Also a local station doing sports. We had like a 4-person sports department in Richmond, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Until they cut it. And guess who was on the chopping block? That would be me. Last one in, they cut it in half. And so I was laid off in Richmond.
Wow.
And was like, I don't know, what am I going to do with my life? I don't know.
How long had you been there? How long had you been in Richmond before this happened?
I had been there 3 years.
Oh, wow. So you were like established. Wow.
Yes. Dang. And I really loved Richmond, but it wasn't a place that I was going to stay. I wasn't planning on staying forever kind of thing. But one of my old news directors who actually hired me in Richmond was now a news director in Nashville. So kids out there, just remember, you never know later down the line who's going to help you get a job, who's going to make you better at your job, any of that. Like just remember that, you never know. And so he called me. We were owned by the same company. He called me 5 minutes after I walked out of the office when they laid me off and said, I've got a job for you doing sports. It's the number 3. So you're going to have to carry a camera, shoot, You're not anchoring, just fill in, whatever. But, and I'm going to pay you your same salary that you were making there, but in Nashville, which, I thought, okay, I didn't know a ton about Nashville. I had visited it, but I was like, great. That was 17 years ago. I still live in this city and I absolutely love it. I got here and decided that I was not going to leave. I was going to stay forever because I fell in love with it, and I did. And so I had a sports director there that was never going anywhere. So I knew I ended up moving up to the number 2 spot over the time. I got to do Titans sidelines, pregame sidelines. That's how I kind of got into it. And then, I decided I wanted my weekends off and I didn't want to carry a camera anymore. And this was over the spring, so it's slower sports time. Our morning news anchor went on maternity leave. She was having her second baby. Well, I was friends with her. I knew she wasn't coming back this time, And so
the more you know.
Yes, the more you know. I said, well, can I just fill in as a morning anchor? I'm like, it's spring, it's kind of slow. Like for sports, I want to fill in. And my news director was like, absolutely not. No, you're a sports person. There's no way I'm going to allow you to fill in. And I was like, well, who are you going to put there? And he's like, I don't know yet. I said, good. Give me a week. Just give me a week. If I suck, you don't ever have to put me there again.
Wow.
Yep. So I filled in. She decided not to come back, and I ended up getting that job. So that was how I switched to morning news. And that switch, part of it too, was right about that time was when opportunities with ESPN came up. And so I couldn't, capitalize on those opportunities unless I had the weekends off to be able to go work college football. When I say I've been lucky in parts of my career that things have just worked out, sometimes God has plans and takes care of you. And that's really kind of how it all went down. And then I was on that morning show. And after 5 years, I was like, I look like I'm 60 because I'm waking up at 2:00 in the morning and going to bed at 9:00 at night. Yeah. And we started at 4 a.m.
Oh.
Yeah. So so that is when I decided to venture into radio.
Wow. And here we are.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. So you kind of briefly mentioned the ESPN stuff there. How did that come about? Was that something that you wanted to get to, that you wanted to pursue, or did they kind of find you and say, hey, we need you to come do this?
I think that's probably a lot of people's goal, right? Network, big time. I have always been in love with college football. Always wanted to be a part of some kind of, bigger coverage of it. So back when I was doing sports on the weekend, like I said, luckily I got to do some Titans preseason games and do sideline and get my feet wet that way. And back then CSS was still a network. I don't know if you guys remember CSS, but it was pre-SEC Network, pre-ACC Network. And so their sideline reporter for a Vanderbilt versus Presbyterian game.
Elite.
Yes, got sick and couldn't work. And so I knew the sideline reporter. He called me. He's like, hey, do you want to take this game? I'm like, heck yeah, awesome. I had known Vanderbilt anyway from covering them, so jumped in, took the game. There happened to be people that worked for ESPN on that crew, and somebody passed my name to John Vasallo and said, hey, she does research. She did a good job. You should look at her. And again, you never know who's watching you or who can help you. And to this day, I don't even know who it was that passed my name to him.
Wow.
I still don't. Yeah.
Wow.
So you just never know, but that's how it all kind of happened. And then Vasallo took a chance on me, and I'm so grateful. And that was 10 years ago.
Right. Wow. How about JV, man? I miss that guy. I love that dude. That's awesome.
He's given a lot of people their starts.
Sure. Wow.
And I like a few times you've said, Don, for people who are trying to get in this business, here's, remember this. And this is your story is very interesting. And I think everyone has a little bit of that where it's almost right place, right time. When what's the saying? When you work hard and it meets a little luck, and then you get something great. And it seems that I mean, we've all been there too. We all understand that, but that's incredible. And so from there, if you're looking at sideline, because sideline, I've done a little bit of it for basketball, and I think it's harder than doing color. And I love doing color, and that's what I do. So I think sideline's harder. I think finding your niche in the broadcast, knowing what is enough, what is not too much, that kind of thing. And then the elements that you deal with in football, I can't imagine with that. So when you were starting to break into sideline and wanting to do that, who were some people that maybe you watched growing up that you thought, okay, I want to emulate that? Or maybe some people you've met in the business that you like to emulate, if you will? I know you're your own person, but just some people you'd watch doing sideline.
Yeah. Let's see, going back, I'm trying to remember now. Nowadays, I feel like all of our sideline reporters are phenomenal, and we have a group text chain where we're, talk to each other ideas, and hey, I do this when I prep and all of that. I love Holly. I think Holly Rowe's always done a phenomenal job. Susie Colbert was like my ultimate back in the day that I just adored and wanted to be like, and loved her. And so I think she does a great job. I like and it's not for everybody, but I'm much more of hey, we're all just having a conversation.
Yes.
And we're all a part of this broadcast, making it better for you, the fan, so that you can get information that, you wouldn't be able to get if I wasn't down here. Right. And so I like the reporters that are doing that style of sideline reporting, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
and Holly does a phenomenal job. And, I think we've got a great crew at ESPN right now. McLean, you're all about the sidelines.
Yeah, Matt does it now.
I've dabbled in it, and I've got to say, I like staying up in my little castle. It's way easier. It's way easier.
Well, football's a different ballgame with the weather. Okay, Don, I want to ask this because I remember when Mac did an XFL game, and he came back and we recorded a podcast, and the top of this dude's head was so sunburned because he was out in the elements. And didn't want to wear a hat on TV. So
what a rookie.
What is your craziest football weather story where you've been out in the elements?
I think I always get asked that. Well, I worked Washington State this past year in Pullman at the end of the year, because it's rivalry week, right? The Apple Cup. So it was like 20 degrees. Super miserable as far as cold. Yeah. But probably the two worst that I've ever dealt with. Now I'm lucky I haven't been, although I feel like snow is better sometimes. I'd rather be in like pouring snow.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because like rain is the worst.
Rain stinks. Yeah.
So I worked the Idaho Potato Bowl. When was this? I think it was 8 years ago. And it was 32 degrees and pouring rain. I mean, pouring. It was, where was PJ Fleck before Minnesota?
Central Michigan. Is that right?
I think Central Michigan.
So it was Fleck, Central Michigan, and I think they were playing Air Force with Coach Calhoun. And it was, just downpour. It never stopped. And it was like 32 degrees. Gosh. I would rather it be pouring snow.
Yeah, just snow at that point.
Yeah. That one was bad. And then I worked a Northwestern. It was at Northwestern in October. And I want to say they played, who was it? Nebraska, maybe? Wisconsin. It was Wisconsin. And that was a like 50 mile per hour wind. I am not even like coming off it was 32
the
degrees.
Lake, yep.
It was rainy, and it was just, the wind was unbelievable, like hard to keep my hat on, windy and cold. It was just, I'm like,
was that this past year, or was that in years previous?
No, that was probably 9 years ago, maybe.
Oh, wow. Because, they just had a very similar game against Ohio State where you couldn't even throw the ball this past season. It was terrible. Was
so crazy. Yes. Yeah, it was terrible. And I'm like, I would much rather it's funny because, we're so accessible through Twitter nowadays.
Sure.
And I love that and hate it at the same time.
Yep.
But I had to check myself at halftime because I had like 15 tweets of people being like, wow, you look absolutely miserable. Like, oh, you can tell
Thanks.
how miserable it is there. You know, like, oh, wow, this sideline reporter is not happy to be there. You know, I better check myself. I think it's showing on my face how cold and windy it is here.
You just get a couple scarves and a couple more mittens, whatever you got to do. It's not fun to say the least.
So those are my like bad weather.
That's right.
I mean, and then I spent 3 years with SEC Network. So working the SEC in August, September, it's 100 degrees wherever you go.
Sure,
you know, that's when you're like, oh, light colored shirt so you can't see my sweat marks.
That's right.
I just don't know how you guys continue to make your hair look good. Like that would just stress me out.
No, that's
well, you see, that's why I did this, Kelly. That's why I did, what I did.
Yeah. Well, not everyone has that option, Eric McLean.
Yeah.
Oh,
or
goodness.
you just throw it in a ponytail or a hat.
True,
right.
But still.
Just wear a hat. Unbelievable. Well, Don, since we're on stories, I did want to ask you, was there ever a moment, whether it was an event, a game, show, whatever it was, that you're like, oh my gosh, like this is it. I work for ESPN. I'm doing what I grew up watching. Was there ever something like that? Because I think we all kind of have that story.
And Don, I have to assume it's the Idaho Potato Bowl, but whatever comes in second to that.
You're right.
Hey, I was like the regular on the Idaho Potato Bowl for a long time now. My very first game for ESPN, first one ever, was at Auburn.
That's so cool.
Like
That's
the
incredible.
eagle flying, just the chills up and down my arms. That was a moment where you have to be like, okay, don't cry.
That's
you're about to go live to do your opening hit, but just all of it, because it's such a special place to me. Can you imagine if your first game was at Clemson that you got?
I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Work for ESPN. Yeah. I mean, it was something. It was, I think they played Washington State that year. I'm trying to remember, but it was Gus, which I had a great relationship with Coach Malzahn too. I mean, it was just, so the football SID helped as an SID when I played volleyball there.
Wow.
It was, everything was just like, I'm like, oh, my own little piece of, I can't believe this is my life,
Wow.
Full circle.
So, full circle. It was really cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we had Taylor Tannenbaum on a couple episodes ago, and she told an epic Iron Bowl story where she was doing local sports and a guy wanted her to spread his grandfather's ashes on the field in the middle of the game.
That has to be an Auburn on Alabama.
It's the Iron Bowl. So either as a fan or as a reporter, do you have either a favorite Iron Bowl story that you've witnessed or just one that you've heard? Because the Iron Bowl, these stories are just, there's nothing like it. The stories that come out of that game.
Oh, there's nothing like it. I don't really have one though. I do remember though, the kick six.
Yeah.
I think it was my second year with ESPN. I can't remember exactly, but I remember exactly where I was when it happened. I was working a Louisville game. It was Houston versus Louisville. And there is no service. You guys know, right? Maybe it's better now, but there's no service in Louisville Stadium.
No,
when you're on the field, your phone does not work.
At all.
Like, at all. So my producer at the time, it was Tom Schofield. My producer at the time was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Just, oh my gosh.
In your ear.
And I'm like, what? Tell me, what's going on? Put it in my monitor. Put it in my monitor. He's like, nope, pay attention. You got a job to do. I'm like, put it in my monitor. So then he's like, I can't wait for us to be done and you to go see what just happened.
Oh my gosh.
I'm trying to pull it up on my phone. I can't get anything. I'm not getting any text. I can't get text out. My brother's at the game.
Oh my God.
So like all these things, I can't see it and I can't even find out what happened. I'm like, who won? At least tell me that. Nobody would tell me anything. So then, of course, game's over. We finished post game with, God, who was the coach at Houston? Tony. He owns Chick-fil-A's now. I forget his name now. Oh, you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm like hurrying, trying to get the interview done. Well, his wife graduated from Auburn. So like, whatever. I'm like, I don't know what happened. I'm about to go find out. Like, just let me go. So end up finally getting out of the stadium. My phone blows up. Like 800 text messages from everybody. And all I want to do is find the video of what happened. So that was, of course, finally my brother sent me video because he was there.
Good.
But yeah, so that's my, everybody is like, oh, kick six. You remember where you were? I'm like, yep. Sure do.
In a black hole. I couldn't find anything.
Shout out to the cards. Unbelievable.
Yes.
Gosh.
Yep.
Oh man. Well, let's jump a little big picture here, Don, into college football, because as we all know, I mean, we're so immersed into this thing. It's changing daily. It feels like, with TV contracts and conferences expanding and decreasing, and all these different things with NIL, transfer portal, playoff expansion. All these different things are happening. With all that coming together, I just want you to kind of use your crystal ball here for a second. Is this good for the sport? Like, are we going to be in a good spot 5-10 years from now? Or are you kind of like, hey, let's slow things down. This is a little bit too much chaos.
I think it depends on what you think is good, right? Because at the end of the day, NCAA is going to go away. It's going to be just this one big, conglomerate of the big schools. So do you think that's good? What happens to the smaller programs?
When does that happen, by the way? When do you think that happens?
Yeah. Tell us the future, Don.
Yeah, I know. Right.
I think like 10 years, I think that's happening.
I think it'll be less than that.
Wow.
I absolutely think it'll be less than that, because and look what's going on with NIL. And Shannon Terry, who started On3, lives here in Nashville. Their headquarters are here in Nashville. We went to their elite event, our radio show broadcast live from there. And so we kind of got to see everything that's going on with that, but everything that's going on with NIL and the legislation and all of that, that's going to do nothing to regulate that, because it can't. Basically, so I think it's going to be sooner than that because of that. And I'm kind of I'm kind of with Nick Saban on this one. Nick has pushed back often about NIL and all of that, but what he's pushing back on is this going into high school with recruits that have done nothing yet.
Right.
And the reports, I mean, remember the Nico reports for Tennessee that he was making $8 million, which by the way,
what do you mean? He's not making that? What are you talking about?
That is not true. Now, I'm not going to say it ain't in the millions, because you know how Vols fans are. They're ready to be back and back.
Wild.
Yes. So, but I just think it's inevitable, and the NCAA waited way too long to try and do anything or even have conversations about it. And now here's where we are. And I think it's going to completely change the landscape of the sport. Now, someone like me, I think it's sad, because I love the opportunity. The fact that I got to play, I know I played at Auburn, but the fact that I got to play a sport in college and learn time management and teamwork and focus and, all of the life lessons that you learn with the ability to play a sport. And for some people, that's how they're getting an education and able to pay for it. And I hate the fact that it could be such a different level of losing some of the smaller programs, perhaps,
Yeah. And especially for the female student athletes, Don. I mean, we know that. And our listeners have heard me belabor that point. And it's sad, because I ask people and no one really knows the answer of, well, are we going to preserve women's sports? Like, do we care enough? I hope we do. And I think some of the recent numbers we've seen with women's hoops and softball and volleyball and just the TV numbers.
They've been big.
Yeah. So that can hopefully maintain that. But this is a question we haven't really gotten to ask someone on our podcast, Mac, because we've got Dawn, who's, more of an SEC person. Like, let's be real. She's an Auburn grad. She works a lot of SEC games. And we know the SEC is in great shape for the future of college football. We know the Big Ten is in great shape. Everyone else is kind of in flux. As someone who follows the SEC and maybe is an SEC fan, are you okay with that? Or in some world, could this get kind of boring? Yes, the SEC has expanded, but if it's just the SEC, just the Big Ten that can really compete, we won't get a TCU in the national title. You don't get Clemson rising up out of nowhere. You don't get some of these other cool stories. Are the SEC people okay with that, I guess is my question.
Well, I mean, SEC is okay with them being at the top always. And that's what Greg Sankey is doing to make sure no matter what happens in the landscape of college football, that it just means more and the SEC is at the top. And Sankey has done a phenomenal job of making that happen and making sure just decision making and the ability to look ahead and kind of look and see what maybe the 5-year out landscape is looking like. And he's making sure that he's taking care of his conference. Now, I'm always the expand the playoff. Let's get more teams in here. Let's get more fan bases. And I argue with my husband all the time. Now he's an Indiana grad. So we talk more basketball than football.
Sure.
But he's like, well, what's the point in expanding the playoff because there's only like 2 or 3 teams that can win? I'm like, no, you never.
We don't know that.
I'm all about the expansion. I'm all about getting more teams in there, and the college football playoff expansion will probably help that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not, and especially depending on how you set it up, I think it'll help it not just become, a 2-conference conglomerate for college football.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating. It really is. And especially at the pace that this thing moves, if it is going to be sooner than 10 years, like what does that look like? Is it 2 super conferences that make this mini NFL type thing? I mean, what is it? What is it going to be?
I can totally see that.
I can too. I think it's
makes me
ultimately going to be 45 teams, 50 teams, football only, basketball only. And then the NCAA will manage everything else. That's what I think is going to happen.
As long as everything else is able to exist. And maybe, look, if you're playing volleyball, maybe you don't get to fly to some places. Like it is what it is, but at least the opportunity is still there. That's what really matters to me personally.
Yep. I agree with that. I do.
We'll
it's going to be fun to watch, isn't it?
It is. I can't wait.
Unpredictable.
I can't wait. It is unpredictable to say the least.
And at the end of the day, it's college football. Those fan bases will always be intact.
That's right.
It is just, we live it every day. It's the middle of the summer and we have people calling to talk smack, about Kentucky, Tennessee fans calling to do that, or, about Vanderbilt or whatever. I'm like, these fan bases are so awesome that college football will always be king.
Someone will always want grandpa to have his final resting place be a college football stadium.
That's right.
By the way, grandpa was an Alabama fan, wasn't he?
Correct. Yes.
Of course. Yeah. Of course he was. Of course he was. Last thing, Don, I just want to get your comment on this because you talk about the expansion and the teams and the atmosphere in college football. I cannot wait to see home playoff games. That is going to be Neyland Stadium, Memorial Stadium at Clemson, between the hedges, Alabama. all those. It's going to be crazy.
Jordan Hare.
It's going to be crazy.
Jordan Hare, come on.
I was going to let her say it.
There. Hugh Freeze is, he's going to fix it all. Come on now.
Thanks again to Dawn Davenport for joining us. And we talk about the grind of doing ESPN and local radio. She is in it, man. She does afternoons in Nashville. That's a major market. And as we said in the intro, signs an extension. So there are very few women in sports talk radio, and she is absolutely killing it with her ESPN duties. She's also a mom. What can't Dawn do? So we really appreciate her time. Had some great stories for us. And I will stand by, and you know this from XFL, Mac, Sideline is so hard, and doing it out in the elements, I'm not built for that. I know my limitations. Not built for it, Matt.
Not for either one of us. Not for either one of us. But yeah, super fun talking with her. I loved her, kind of thoughts in general about college football and where it's going. And she maybe thinks a little quicker than I do, but who knows? It could be right around the corner, and this thing looks totally different. The key is we're all going to be here to hopefully talk about it and to keep exploring. But that's it from us, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Another great episode of Graham and Mac Lane, presented by our great friends over at Ingles. You got to check them out. Everything you need for 4th of July, they've got it in bulk. They got the savings, whatever you need. Go check them out. Get it done there. And I appreciate you guys always joining us here on YouTube. If you haven't, go over there, subscribe, leave some comments. We do some fun things over here. And of course, the OGs on Apple Podcasts, rate, review, subscribe there as well. But until next time, we'll see y'all.